Are you ready?
Irashaimase, everybody. Bienvenidos. Konnichiwa. I guess it's Ohio gozaimasu because it's morning. It is Thursday morning, the day after Valentine's Day, and I am going to the Los Angeles Art Fair. Yeah. We've been transitioning from illustration comic books to kind of more fine artwork. And I'm going to share with you my thoughts, my experiences as I go to the LA Art Fair. Now, I've never been to this art fair. I've been to others. I've been, of course, to the Brewery Art Walk. I went to the other art fair, it's called, which is the Saatchi Art. So I've been to other ones, but I haven't been to this one. I'm excited to go. I'm very excited to be filled with inspiration and ideas and just filled. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to go pick up Nathaniel, who'll be kind of my running mate here. We'll see if he's open to being on camera and recording. If he is, you'll see him. If not, I'll just share with you my thoughts post-show. So let's cross our fingers if Nathaniel's not camera shy. Let's go check it out.
Like, I think my favorite bit like idea of the whole book is the fact that, like, it is so well written and so accessible in a way that, like, defies, I mean, what we, obviously the, like, international art English, but also just like, I mean, going through grad school and, like, the way that artists are, like, we struggle sometimes to talk about our work for lots of reasons.
Right.
But, like, that in particular, it's like I was, like, talking to Nikita last night and thinking, like, this is like a book that I would literally give everybody. Art school. Everybody. Yeah, I mean everybody, but especially art school graduates. Yes. Whether or not they were, because like, but I wouldn't give it to them in school because, like, I don't want them focusing too much on, like as a professor, I wouldn't want them focusing too much on, like, the outside world quite the same way. But like the moment you graduate, I'd be like, okay, and this is kind of like the world you might be trying to get into. Yeah. But like also this is like this is the example of how to talk about these things, about how to talk about the stuff that you're, like the way she defines the white cube, the way she defines, there was a couple other things that she's taught. I mean, the way she, like, gave word to context. I never had used that word, but, like, it's such a great word for, like, summing up the situation. So
yeah, I have a lot of, first off, the book is wonderful. I'm obsessed with it. And as I'm deep diving into this, I'm preparing for the solo show, May the 3rd. So I've got a lot of thoughts. And I'm just like, I'm struggling with this idea that I think I'm just making couch art. I think that's, at the end of the day, I'm just making art that I think is aesthetically interesting or pleasing. And I'm concerned about that.
Why?
I don't know. I have that issue because there's the part of me that wants to be the elitist, the this is beautiful, this, sideways toilet or whatever. There is that part of me that wants to be of that class. I've always wanted to be of that class. I've always been poor and I've never been that.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? And so I've always wanted to aspire to be the hoity-toity.
Okay, so it's more of a
my personal issues.
Well, yeah, so it's more like you don't necessarily, like, it's not like you want to make, like, truly, like, just 100% concept work. It's more like you just want to be part of the in-group that you felt excluded from for most of your life.
Yeah, I get, and I want to have art that is, I don't want someone to look at my art and just say, it is kind of couch art. It is that, like, oh, it looks cool, it's like, but there's nothing to say about it. We talked about this before when your studio visit was like moving the discussion, pushing the discussion. You were like, don't worry about the discussion. Don't worry about that. Just make good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But there is a part of me that wants to, do something different. Do something that, like, pushes it. But if you're just painting, like, just straight up painting, not putting fluorescent light bulbs on it or whatever,
So at least make sure.
I I do wonder, has it all been done? Like, is there a technique with canvas and oil that hasn't been done? And it's like, I don't know, man. It's like,
I mean, yeah.
You know, and does that matter? Because then you go, well, then it's about the context. It's about like what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
And what are you trying to say? And I guess what I'm saying is, as I'm painting, even last night I was painting, I was like, I don't even know if I have any. I don't know what I am saying. Someone else is gonna have to tell me what I'm saying, because I'm just painting things that I like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's like a conflict right now. It's like,
for sure. And
it's like, I don't even know if I don't have a thesis on, you know, the plight of a half Mexican man in Ventura. You know, I don't have like the thesis of, man, the society and Trump, or I don't have none of that kind of stuff. I just,
you know, it's
painting things I like.
So this feels like exactly where I was at sometime for a lot of like my undergraduate work, and then for some time afterwards, for a significant amount of time afterwards. And Stephanie Dykes, who I consider one of my most formative mentors. I often call her my print mom. Okay. But she was she runs Saltgrass Printmakers in Salt Lake. Okay. Anyway, and she is I remember making, like, when I got a show at a gallery at Finch Lane. It's like a state funded gallery, and so it is not concerned with selling stuff. Anyway, and I was doing it with a buddy of mine, Mitchell Lee, and at that point I was like, crap, I don't really know if any of my work is really saying much. I had these like vague notions about spirituality and all this kind of stuff that, like, you know, I knew I liked putting halos behind things. I knew I knew there was like these kind of things of beauty, and my buddy Mitchell was like painting on cardboard, right? He was like making things as trashy as possible, right? And both of us had like some vague ideas of what we were doing, and bring it back to Stephanie now, but I remember sitting there, like, making this work and being so concerned that it kind of like where you're at, being like I don't have a thesis statement for this. And Stephanie has always done this, but has always basically said, like, be patient, it will come in time. And what was really ironic for me is like, well, not ironic, I guess it was apropos. Was that, like, I never clarified what I was making, like, for that entire show. I made a bunch of like work that felt like it was all by the same artist, but it wasn't cohesive. Right? And so I made a bunch of work. It went up, you know, nothing sold as normal. And then I went to and then near the end of me making that work, because by the time you're like the last couple months before my shows for me is, I'm like not really in idea mode anymore. I'm in production mode, right? I have all my ideas out that I know I can get out in time, and then I'm just making, you know, framing, all that kind of stuff, right? And so so in that time, I started to think about this question that I used to have, that I had thought about from time to time in high school. I mean, not in high school, when I was in college, because by this point I'm like 3 or 4 years out of college, and
out of
my undergrad. Undergrad. And so I was thinking about this idea about, like, what is my identity, right? Because I didn't feel like I ever fit anywhere. Because having, you know, even though I grew up in Utah as a Mormon, I mean, still a Mormon, but I grew up, I wasn't like a multi-generational kid there, you know. I was always on the outside everywhere. It's like, I never felt like I truly identified as a Utah, and so like I started to like, and you know, I didn't feel like I really had much of a culture, because I couldn't see the forest from the trees, right? And I felt that my culture was like this just blank American one, which is not not culturalist. It's a real thing, right? Anyway, and so it was during that time that I started to think about it, and then I was like, as like a personal quest for myself, I was like, I'm interested in reading some of these books. I mean, and like trying to figure out what it means to be, you know, like what it means to be a very specific, like to have grown up in the West, and what, you know, how does that differ me from like other people, and then in this quest for my own identity is where I kind of like began to understand what I wanted to make artwork about. And then it took all of grad school of like kind of like that 3 years of like working and refining and doing a lot of false starts and a lot of like this is kind of what I'm going for, this is, and like once again I felt like for most of the time how would I describe this? I felt like I was taking a bite out of something, but like missing half of it, right? That I was kind of getting it, and then it wasn't until very near the end that it all kind of clicked for me. And so like all of that, you know, I just told my whole story, but like all of that is to sit there and say, like, if you're like gearing up for a solo shot, having just recently like switched from doing, your main medium was comic books and that kind of stuff, I mean, switch to starting doing fine art stuff, it's gonna take time. You know, it took me like, at this point, I guess it was like like nearly 10 years to get to like a real defined thing. And then, like, you know, I might move on from what I'm doing eventually. But like right now I have so many ideas that I want to do that I think are interesting, and so
and then there's a part of me, again, the elitist part of me does not want to sell to schmoes. You know what I mean? I want people, I want good people to have their work. You know what I mean? I don't want just some grandmama or some aunt or, you know, somebody from church to buy a painting. I want like somebody of a character to get to say that it's good. So so here's another thing. Many times people say, "Oh, I really like that piece." Okay. There's my wife, and then there's my neighbor, Bill. If they like something, I know that I don't like it. Like, and that's just because they just don't have. They just like, you know, the art that's on Target. You know what I mean? The stuff that's just like hanging places in an elevator in a hotel room. So there's certain people I value. Like there's a couple artists I know that if they like something of mine, I'm like over the moon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I prioritize, or I categorize certain people in a certain thing, and I want those people to like my work, not just that common guy. Now, on the flip side, there's an artist in Santa Barbara who does landscapes. They're beautiful landscapes, but they're very kind of traditional, realistic looking oil paintings. Now, they're big, they're good sized, probably 4x5s or something like that, or maybe a little smaller than that. Premium price, but I bet you the art world would think of that as just kind of boring. But so it's like, okay, you can sell high end stuff to schmoes, and hey, you can make a living doing that and be happy. You don't have to have some kind of exotic, weird piece with some meaning, I guess. So so there's, you know what I mean? And I'm curious about today. I'm assuming most people will be schmoish. I don't know.
Now that it's
kind of a lower end one. It's kind of a lower end one. I think this will be the more like general. I think the things we're going to see are going to be very kind of not pushing our like boundaries of art.
So I guess my feeling about selling to schmoes.
And we're using this term schmoes because that's what Bianca used to say the average person.
The average person.
Art versus,
I'll be honest, I would rather sell to schmoes all day.
Oh.
Because, I mean, in my mind, the only advantage to selling to good people, placed. Placed. That was such a funny phrase.
I know, I love it.
But like,
I love it.
Like, I would love to have that kind of, like, I would love to be placed by, you know, at like houses where like people actually know the work and are gonna love it, right? You know,
I wouldn't want it in a warehouse. Like, where's it at, or it's in storage. Or,
it's like,
you know what I mean?
It's like, which is sad because the artwork I want to make is the artwork that sells for too much. I mean that like you know I can't sell like a quilt that takes me 150 hours to make for like only $100. That's just not gonna happen, right? You know, and so
but the people who would buy it for $100 would probably love it.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Love it.
Would love it. So that's kind of rub,
like,
right?
Like
people who appreciate it just can't afford that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
and so and so understanding all of this, it's like I would love to be owned by the schmoes, and part of me is wondering, it's like do I want to be sitting there at the schmo little art festivals that do I want to be sitting at a farmer's market to be hawking my wares? No, that's one thing I don't want to do.
Right.
Mainly because that just feels like the wrong way to do it. Yeah. And so not because I feel like those people are making bad work, but because I know how I feel when I walk by like a stand of ceramics.
Yeah.
And this wonderful ceramicist has made all these beautiful pots, and I look at it with like only a little bit more interest than I would look at like an aisle of ceramics at Target, right? It's like there needs to be like some level of like, it's not just a commodity to me. The artwork I make is not just a commodity.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So,
well, and I do like. I mean, I'm excited to go to the show because I told you before when I went to that gallery down in LA last Saturday. I was texting you about like the technical skill was fine. It was. I like the colors and stuff, but it's not something that like blew me away. It was stuff I've seen at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
But now, after speaking to you and reading the book more, I'm gonna look at today's show not with that vision of I could do it or the technical skill or any of that, but I'm gonna look at the idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And really start looking at, okay, what is the idea? What is, she used the word context a lot. What's communicating to me? Not necessarily like, this looks a lot like an artist I've seen before, or I could, these drawings are pretty simple to do. I see what they did.
Yeah.
Because they did it, so there was some meaning behind it.
Yeah.
I kind of want to like look at it in that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like minimalist stuff that in a way I do like, but I do kind of like breeze through it because it's like, okay, it's very like what's that artist I really like? Pierre
Mondrian.
Yeah. Right? Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But if there's a guy that's doing stuff like that today, which there could be, I would probably just walk by quickly. It's like, okay, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
For sure. It's like, so that one artist that showed in Ventura that we both went to the show, and it was the piece that literally looked like he just like looked at her like almost copied Rothko.
Yeah.
It's like that was the least interesting piece because and now mind you, I love Rothko. I just do not want to see someone imitate Rothko.
Yeah.
Right? It's like because part of the problem was also it just wasn't big enough.
The reason why his were good is because they're massive.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna give me a giant nuanced color field, it's gotta be so big that I feel like I can bathe in it, right?
Well, if you're gonna do Pollock, you can't do 4x6.
Yeah,
you gotta go like 12x20 or something. You
gotta go so big.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's there. There's like it's like there's got to be there's a reason why those worked out really really well.
Yeah.
Like why at the time and why they kept getting bigger. I mean, part of it is because they could and people were buying the work, so like why not?
Yeah.
But the other part of it is just like it's like the reason it stood the test of time is because like people can walk into like the LA MoMA and like because like that's where I think I saw my first Rothko's in person, and I remember walking in and being like, oh, this is really I really get it now. You know.
Well, and that's the thing about I love art books and I love looking at art books and I buy them and you get a sense of some things, but really you can't appreciate Pollock, a lot of these abstract guys, you cannot appreciate until you see it in person.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you just can't get first off, the texture, of course, which is a big part of it, the three-dimensionality of like, the painting. You just don't get a sense of in getting enveloped in that space and the process of making it until you see it live. You're like, oh, okay. Rothko, it wasn't just one color. It was like hundreds of layers of these swatches that you put on and different densities and thicknesses and stuff. So you got to see it live
for sure.
And so I'm excited.
I think one of the only artists that I mean, heck, that even counts for like a Rembrandt. Like you can get a faithfully reproduced image, like to the right size and everything, with like a high DPI or whatever,
right?
And it'll look good, and you'll be able to like recognize it. And if you're just using it for like a reference for something, it works exactly what you need it to. But like there is something else about seeing the actual prints, and seeing it like and being able to see that slight three-dimensionality that happens with an etching, the way that like paper gets and the paper ink. It is like there is. I remember this. There was a story told. I forget. I think it happened when I heard it from someone in school, probably grad school. But it was one. Oh no! Now I remember. It was a podcast on Hello Print Friend, which is a print making podcast. Okay. And one of the guest artists was telling a story about how she, like, during a summer while she was in college, she went on she just went on a European 2-week tour kind of thing. Ended up hitting like some of her like dream prints that she had wanted to see. You know, I think they were by, it might have been Dürer pieces. I'm not sure, but she saw these prints and she was so disappointed by them. She was just like, they just weren't as good as what I imagined. And then she was telling her professor that when she got back to school or whatever, and the professor was like, do you really think like at that particular museum they have like the real Dürer pieces out all the time? Right. Like you probably saw a reproduction, right? You know, and there is something like, and I don't necessarily know if that's true, whether or not she saw the reproduction, but I think that, but like there's a reason why, like, also the like in Florence they have a statue of Michelangelo's David, a reproduction out in the street where it originally was, but it's like even done a little bit crappier so that when you go see the one in the museum, it actually feels different than the one. But all those things are, all that kind of like there is something that is put like an artwork that you've put blood, sweat, and tears into, about no matter who it is, that an original artwork is always going to feel better than a reproduction. You know, no matter how faithful the reproduction is. There is something, I mean, I think the same thing counts for in printmaking, considering I'm a printmaker. Like, there is something that's like special about like the art that like feels like there's something that you as an artist infuse in your work, whether that I know this sounds so lame and not hoity-toity, like mystical, but like there really is something that like an original work feels different than like a knockoff.
Oh, for sure.
So so today will be an interesting time, and definitely but continue.
What did you think of the chapters about Miami, the Basil's art show, and that reminded me a lot of Comic-Con. I've been going to Comic-Con for 10 years.
Okay.
And it's a different class of people, but it's that fervor. It's everyone is there. Everyone is going to parties all night that week. It's like that. I mean, okay. Comic-Con is like a bizarro, but of course the magnitude of dollars being spent is completely different.
Yeah.
What shocked me was this idea that people travel with their art and go and kind of set up a little like area, to come show it off. Like a stamp, she mentioned like a stamp collector. Like, here, come check out my baseball cards.
Yeah.
Here, come to this Airbnb, or I don't know, they rent a house or something, and check out the art that I bought. And they bring it with them.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I mean, that kind of mentality is...
That's so crazy.
I mean, who am I to sit there and judge someone for doing what they want to do, right?
Love
like,
it.
Yeah, and they love it, and everyone else around them loves it, and their little culture does it.
Yeah.
But like the other part of me is like it feels like I think that it's this really interesting idea about being a collector that it kind of like becomes like somehow by purchasing that work, you purchase the right to feel an ownership to like the same level of like accomplishment that like the artist got just from making the work, right?
And I feel there's a competition between the two.
Yeah.
Like, I got an original Rothko. Oh yeah, I got 2 Pollocks, or I got you know what I mean? So there is that kind of like, I think there, you know.
Yeah, but it's
one-upsmanship, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it feels so silly to me. It feels so
because the artist's art isn't benefiting either. Because you got Julie, who got $600 for the damn painting,
and now it's being sold for like hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction.
Yeah,
and that's in turn turning her into ruining her career.
And making it to where then galleries have a quite. That's the part I don't quite get. I get the idea of like, okay, now everyone's gonna dump these and get rid of them before. I guess I'm not quite 100% understanding why that ruins her career.
So what that does is that essentially it's like dumping stocks, and so it's the idea that like by you putting a piece up for auction, it is you know, it's like one thing if it's like 1 or 2 people doing it, but when it keeps happening again and again and again, it's showing that the investors do not think that you are going to continue to, you know, that like, because at this point the collectors are looking at paintings as investments, right? You know, it's there are some collectors who might collect the work and truly just want to collect the work, but there's a sizable amount of them that are literally just using it as an investment, and so they're selling it when they think they can get the best price for it.
Well, and to be fair though, if I would have bought that painting for $1,000 and now it's $100,000,
that $100,000 is life changing.
And I'm like, okay, I gotta sell it, sister. Sorry. So I understand you gotta sell it when it's hot, but I also conversely, if everybody sells it when it's hot, then suddenly it will not be.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because then it's this idea about like, you know, even though she had like she talks about Bianca talks about how there was how everything was that she was like booked up, and that Julie was booked up, and that there was really high demand for her paintings.
Yeah.
But like it's to me it feels like a very boom and bust idea, where it's like she's booming right now, but you do not want to boom because then it's going to lead to a bust, and then suddenly you're worthless, right? And instead you want a manageable, sustained growth. And so I've never heard of the fact that you could like go back to the gallery that you bought the work from and try to resell it through that same gallery.
That's interesting.
And I thought that. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I saw that as like the more ethical way to do it, because at the very least, Julie would have gotten what I think it was like 10% of the cut, you know, of the resale. Like I think that's like the ethical way to do it, because that it keeps Julie that keeps Julie in a position, you know, that helps the art. That's like a rising tide lifts all boats, versus the auction is a solely selfish thing.
But you're right, and there is that element of, you know what, you're the art monkey, just keep making art. So it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like we put artists up as high, like, oh, Basquiat, no one could do this. He's a brilliant man, and at the same time, keep working, monkey, and I'm gonna get your paintings cheap, and then I'm gonna sell it. So you know what I mean? And you are a tool. Yeah. You are just a plebe making the temple for the Gaza, or, you know.
For the
Egyptian pyramids.
Pharaohs, right?
Some kind of artisan in Greece. You're making the columns. So there is that, right?
100%. Yeah. Right? Like I definitely agree that like there is this that like that like
we worship them, but we also like want them to keep pumping out work. Everybody.
Yeah,
musicians,
for sure.
Actors.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your new album?
Exactly.
This isn't as good as the last week going.
Yeah,
okay. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like
entertain me.
It's like it's kind of like watching. It's like either the album is too close to what you just made, what you made before, or it's too different, and so it's this impossible tightrope that you got to walk.
Yeah.
And it's and so like I definitely think that happens with everybody, and I also think that it happens as this problem in I don't know. Part of me like can't help but think about it as like the class dynamic of it all, about like about how like it's like I remember reading a headline. Now this I'm gonna butcher whatever science this is, but like this idea that because I think I've read headlines and I've read like reports about studies where they talk about how like the wealthy the wealthy literally do not see. Oh, that guy's telling you to turn over to get over.
I was going 80, and if they can't deal with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that guy's an asshole. But like, I have another story about an asshole in just a second. But like this idea about how people are, about how like the rich see, like, have like a certain sense of like true entitlement, right?
Yeah.
That it's because like I've heard anecdotes about how the most like miserly, stingy people in the world are the people with money, right?
Yeah. They want 20% off these paintings.
Yeah,
you see that?
Yeah.
I was told Nicole, I'm like, Nicole, the richest people in the world want a discount, a 20% discount.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? You're the one people that should not get a discount?
Yeah, you're the one.
You can afford,
you can afford this.
It's so frustrating. And I hear that everywhere, right? Like restaurants, everything gets comped to everything. They always have comp stuff. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Or they don't pay the bills, right? That was a freak. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You mean they're like having to go chase these collectors for money?
Yeah, chase.
Like, why would they even hand them the painting before? I don't understand that part of it. Why are you giving them physical property? Why are you giving them this stuff?
Why is the object in their possession if you don't have the transaction? If the transaction hasn't been completed?
They have a relationship with the museum.
Yeah.
And so you hope that they might tell the museum something.
Yeah.
And
It's like
this promise of a hope.
Yeah, for sure. I understand all that concept, but it's kind of like if I was gonna go buy something from that rich person, they would laugh in my face if I said I'll get you the money next week.
Exactly.
Right? They would be like, you don't get what you're buying now, right? And like you don't walk into a convenience store and try to buy a Coke and say oh, I'll give you the money the next time I come in. That's so dumb.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, so there's like that amount of like entitlement that happens, and then it's wild. Okay. So the other asshole story. This was yesterday. I was at work, and so like I was at the mall, right? And I was pushing a cart through a little cart because I was getting a bunch of supplies from my car that I was going to take up to the room.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm pushing my little cart out to the car, and I wait for like this truck to pass me, and then I start walking out, and this like sedan comes along, and I'm walking through the parking lot, and the sedan has to slow down, and I guess stops because they want to like go through this parking lot really fast, and they have to stop because for me as I'm crossing the lane or whatever, right? Yeah. Anyway, and they honk at me like somehow as a pedestrian I do not have the right of way, like how I somehow do not have the right of way, and so then I look at them and kind of shrug and keep going, right? Because I'm not gonna flip them off, I'm not gonna be a dick, and I'm not gonna escalate the situation. Anyway, as they drive off, there's two people in the car, and they both yell at me and go, "Bitch!" And I was like, what is going through your mind? You are that entitled that you feel like you need to drive through this parking lot of a rather dead mall.
Yeah, right.
at the speed that like you were that like how dare I delay you for 5 seconds? How dare I? You know, it's
people get upset, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Anyway, so that was just a funny thing yesterday, and then I walked in and worked with entitled middle schoolers all day. So not because they're rich, but because they're middle schoolers.
Yeah.
Because they are not rich, but middle schoolers are always entitled.
Pain in the ass. Have you? So I'm assuming you haven't been to Miami Basel.
No.
Or anything like that.
No, it's Basel.
Basel is it Basel?
Yeah.
And there's other ones, right? So there's one in London, or was it?
So Basel, I know it started in Switzerland.
Okay. Yeah,
and so I don't know if it's been in
other places.
I don't remember where it's at now. It's like I have been so uninterested.
What city did you get your MFA?
Oh, so I was in Connecticut, and so we were.
Did you go to Armory in New York?
No, I mainly because like I was really bad about like paying attention to those times.
Okay.
And so like I really should have. But like
that would have been the big one, right?
Yeah, but like it's what was interesting is my fellow graduate students always seemed to know when all these things were coming up, and like because they were paying attention to it, right. And I didn't. Yeah. I literally had never heard about the Armory Show before graduate school. I mean that's part of like the issue of being like educated in Utah, right?
Yeah. You're just not in touch with what's
You're
up.
Not close enough to anything for them to like for anyone to like tell you about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like the only thing that I think I ever heard about was like the Turner Prize, which do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
So it's a giant art prize that like is kind of like one of the most like prestigious in the world. It's kind of like almost like winning a Nobel laureate, right? Wow. So it's like a big deal.
Oh.
But like you know everything else I had so like Art Basel, I think I had heard about it, and then it while I was in my undergrad, and I think the only reason it has stuck with me is because because Kanye mentions it in one of his tracks. He says Basel, not Miami. Switzerland is like some some like way for him to like brag.
Yeah,
but anyway, and so like it's like I was like learning about all this stuff, and then I was honestly dealt with too much anxiety to like ever really like make the time to go, and so I never went, and so instead all I did was like I went to a lot of institutions. I checked out a couple galleries while I was there, more than a couple, but like a handful of galleries.
New York or
in New York, because we would go into New York.
Is it like a 2-hour train ride?
Yeah, it was. We would drive an hour to New Haven and then hop on the train, and then it's a 2-hour train ride in. And so I was in New York probably like once every 3 months or something like that. Okay. And so like I was in enough, and because I went with Nikita all the time, we ended up, you know, what the deal was that we would hit one museum every time we went, and so I got to see the museums eventually, all of them.
Yeah.
The one museum that I was really disappointed in was the Whitney.
Oh really? Oh really?
Yeah.
She mentions in the book the Whitney.
Yeah, I saw the biennial, and this would have been the biennial in, I think it was 21 or 22.
Yeah.
And it was
COVID though. Well, it was like 21 is during COVID, right?
Yeah. So maybe not. I don't know. But like I remember going through it, and there was. It's not like I saw any of the work and said like this is absolute garbage.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing there was maybe 1 out of every 10 pieces I liked. Mm-hmm. You know, as there was some pieces that I felt were really kind of like, really guys, this is what you picked. This is what you think this is what you think is like representative of contemporary art world. Yeah. And to me, what that taught me more than anything is like how divorced I was from like the New York art scene. I clearly didn't understand what was, and which is, I think, kind of a thing that happens to almost everyone at some point, right? Yeah. That you realize how much of an outsider you are.
Yeah.
And so like I never went to the Armory Show.
I do want to start investigating more about contemporary art versus modern art. So
okay,
you know what I mean. So because I feel like I'm still in the modern art world as far as what I'm doing. The things I'm doing are things that were done in the 50s or in the 60s or even earlier in the 20s, and I want to know really when that starts happening from like the 70s on.
Okay, I mean,
and I know the 80s. I know like the Warhol stuff and the New York scene there, but what's really happening in the 90s to now? And why is that? Why is this contemporary art era different than the modern art? Really?
Okay,
you know what I mean? And like,
so the reason modern art is not considered contemporary, why it's like its own place in history, is because modern art is about modernism. It's like the historical philosophical trends of modernism and postmodernism. Have you heard those before?
I'm not familiar with modernism.
Okay, so modernism is this idea that like especially was existing around the turn of the century and up through the 50s, about this idea that you could like almost like engineer a utopia, right? That you could create this world that there was like the best way to do it or the most refined way to do it, and this like it was and so if you I wish I could like phrase it better, because I literally have not had to describe modernism in years. So I'm like really bad at it. But like modernism really kind of starts with, I believe it's Matisse.
Like in the 1870s, 1860s.
No, a little bit later than that. Yeah, so Matisse was is it Matisse? Who's the guy? No, it must not be Matisse. It's the guy who's the post-impressionist that went to Fiji. Manet. Yeah, so it really kind of begins with Manet. And yeah, because he goes to Fiji, and because like the like impressionists were almost like a transition, right? Because the impressionists were still making stuff that was like in my mind like kind of like the sweet spot of like pretty representational, but like willing to take liberties, right? And so and then you get Manet, and then Manet like eventually like the post-impressionists transition into like you have then people like Picasso and Braque coming up with like Cubism, and then all these other like isms that start to follow, and all of this was like, it was like in Europe there was this idea about like oh, we now need we can like we would just want the simplicity of life, and a lot of it might have been like a reaction to like the industrial, like things that are happening with the Industrial Revolution, and all there's like a complicated reason why this happened, because it's not only a reaction, but it's also because like in concert with the Industrial Revolution, about this idea that we can manufacture like homogeneity, and that's a good thing, right? And so all of that kind of kept going, and then I think modernism really began, like its last like its crescendo was like abstract expressionism. So things that happening with like Pollock and Rothko, because it's by that point that you because I look at like what they did as kind of like the inevitable
it's kind of like the end point.
The like end point, right? Because
it's like now you're beyond any representational thing. You're beyond figurative. You're just now into like extremely like entropy. Or, you know what I mean? Like where there's no rhyme or reason or rationale or logic.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like
senses.
Exactly. It was also very sensory, right?
Exactly. And so like Pollock was using paint and letting paint be as real as paint is, where he was using paint drip, because that's what paint does. It drips, right? It drips, it splatters, it splashes, that kind of stuff. And then you have Rothko like sitting there being like, I'm all about color and making these giant color field paintings. And I always talk about Rothko because he's like my favorite abstract expressionist. But like, and so then like that was kind of like the end of like, that was like the last hurrah of modernism in my mind. And of course, I'm sure an art historian, if they saw what I said, would be like, no, that's not actually it, and like try to define the line either earlier or later, right? But that's like, as my understanding, that's kind of like where like the transition point really started to happen, because after that you get guys like Warhol and Lichtenstein or Liechtenstein. I don't.
Yeah. Well, that's like the '60s pop art.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what we call pop art.
Doing pop art.
Yeah.
Because Warhol ended up doing exactly what all the Dada people like Duchamp was doing, you know, half a century earlier. Right. Where they're just trying to be like, okay, you know, we're tired of these big like massive paintings. Let's do something different. And so like all of that gets tied to like counterculture and all these other things that like was happening in the '60s, right? And so like clearly, for Perfect that happens. We're, you know, and so like, and it's like contemporary art is ultimately like this really broad description about anything that has started to happen, that is happening like in the recent history that like you don't really have there, like art historians haven't been able to like classify it yet.
It's almost so this really is actually you just said it. This is the period that we don't have a classification yet until it's over. And then we'll like, okay, now we can go back and say this is the whatever. Because
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe for a while it's gonna be a little bit hard to figure out because the trends are so, because maybe the trend is that there are no trends. Is that
it's just going
it's that there's something for everybody at a different time, and that instead it's like really fast paced and like, because ultimately what's happening right now is there's collectors collecting and there's like museums trying to acquire and all this stuff, and it's like this like constant gathering, but we do not know 100 years from now who the artists making work now are going to be, the, you know, which ones of them are truly going to become the next like Van Gogh, you know, are going to be like recognized like Van Gogh, are going to be recognized like Picasso, are going to be like where we're going to sit there and be like, these are like the important names you need to know. There's a few that I would list that I would say like I think are like incredibly influential, like Kara Walker. I think is in. Do you know her work?
No.
Have you been to the Broad yet?
The Broad, I have.
Okay. So in that case, you've seen her work.
Okay.
She does the blacks, the black and white silhouettes on the wall.
Yeah, of course. So, she's great. Yes.
Kara Walker.
She's the real deal.
I will forever say that she is going to be someone who well, she's got a story. I mean, that's a story.
Right?
For sure.
The like lynching. I mean, it's like super dark.
In my mind, she is someone who is going to be in art history textbooks and deserves to be there, without question, in my mind, right? And then there's like other people who like I remember seeing an artist talk by Julie Meretu, I think is how you pronounce her name. She also has an artwork there at that same museum. But like, and her work is beautiful. It's these beautiful like abstract, big, complex things. And like hers, I'm not sure if it'll stand the test of time. It doesn't mean that her stuff isn't quality, because it really is. But the question is whether or not we're all, people 100 years later are, whether her name is going to be in on our lips the same way like a Pollock would be, right? And I realize that history, there's like part of the issue of history is like who gets to decide what is history, who gets to decide what is worth it, who gets to decide all these things. But like, because like someone standing the test of time isn't just like, you don't stand the test of time just based on the strength of your work alone. That's not, because like if because if that was it, then clearly, we would probably have a lot more people standing the test of time, because I know a lot of people who make really incredible work that will never be in an art history book.
Well, so that should never be someone's goal, although I'm sure it is.
I remember giving this goal. I remember telling this goal of mine to a professor, where I said I want to be successful enough that someone can stumble upon my work in like 50 years after I'm dead and be like, oh, this guy's awesome, right? And I'm not saying like like, and I'm not even talking about like the general public. I just want another artist to be able to stumble upon my work in 50 years and be like, this is really interesting stuff. The same way, because like, and the reason I say this is because it makes me, because like I want to stumble upon someone else's work, like I stumbled upon this printmaker named Arthur Briscoe. Like when I stumbled upon his work, he's a British printmaker, you know, was a sailor, and so he made lots and lots of etchings of like sailors at sea. And like he made some absolutely incredible work that I truly cannot like sing the praises of enough. And they are, and like I had no idea who he was when I showed him to everyone, all the other printmakers I knew. They had no idea who he was. Like, and so like this is like I just happened to stumble on him because I was like etching water, and then like it was like halfway down the Google page or something, right? And so like I want my work to be at least be in like a good enough of a position that can be the that can be my that can be a legacy, right? And so that doesn't mean I need to be in an art history book. That just needs to mean that maybe I need to have a better online presence, so that like you know.
Did you look at that artist Julie, who she works with? Did you ever look her up?
I looked her up briefly just to see what her artwork looks like, so that when
you talked about it,
so that when Bianca was talking about it, I like understood what, you know, I could picture like how she was painting it.
Well, what do you think?
I liked her work.
You like it?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I think it was I think it's like not necessarily the way I would paint, but like I can really enjoy that kind of approach. Like, you know, have you seen the French Dispatch from what's his face? Wes Anderson?
Which movie?
The French Dispatch?
No.
Okay. I don't love the movie. Okay. I think I made it about.
A lot of his movies,
I think I made about halfway through, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this, and so I turned it off. But there's this scene early on where, because like what it is I think it's like a story of like 3 or 4 different like vignette, like short stories or whatever. Anyway, there's one. One of the stories is Javier. No, it's not Javier Bardem. Shoot, who's the guy that was in Sicario, the assassin?
I know who you're talking about. I don't remember the name right off the top of my head.
Oh my gosh. It starts with a B. It's not. Anyway, he is playing like an artist that's in prison. Anyway, but there's this conversation between two and it's set in Paris, and like in 1910, 1920 or something, maybe earlier, like maybe the 1800s. I don't know. Anyway, and there's this scene where Adrian Brody is trying to convince a couple art collectors or whatever that like this new finagled abstract artwork is something worth buying, and this is brand new to them, and so the art collectors are like I don't get it, why am I trying to buy it? And then Adrian Brody, like I can't remember if he like shows them a different painting by the same artist or if he shows them a drawing, and he says so if an artist who can make this and like it's a perfectly rendered thing thinks that this is better and points at like the abstract work, then maybe there's something, you know, to be said about that, right? And so like I can't help like that scene plays in my mind whenever I'm looking at someone's artwork that feels like abstract, when I can tell that they know what they're doing and they're specifically painting that way for a reason. And there's something special about that. Like the way one of the other grad students that I went to school with, Megan, Megan Tresca, just in case this part someone is watching this and wants to like know this artist, her name is Megan Tresca. She's awesome. She lives in Rhode Island. Anyway, she fabulously talented, like better draftsman than I am for sure, and more natural talent there. But the way that you wouldn't know that initially by just looking at her paintings, because she like warps her figures and paints with like you know, like her favorite artist is Alice Neal, so she takes a lot of cues from the idea about like, you know, can I define this with can I define the feeling of this arm rather than like the actual reality of this arm, right?
Yep.
And so she like really like warps the figure a lot, but like you see her draw, and like the way that she's able to like render stuff without even like thinking about it versus like I often have to have a reference or have drawn the thing so many times that I have the reference like embedded in my head, right? That I cannot draw from my head yet. Megan is like,
that's what she does. Yeah,
that's what she does, and the way she like, so watching her work, and so like that's how I felt like Julie was someone who like had some really. I'm just gonna take this off. The sun is beating at me. No, I don't. We don't need to like make it super cold in here. I just need to get this bad boy off. Anyway, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought of Julie's art, and I think we're going to see it here too, is this delineation between fine art and illustration.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm coming from the illustration world, and really the only difference I see, and this has been hard for me to kind of like picture, but I think really illustration is just art that is made for a particular use, usually some company or some product, right? So like you're making a painting for a book cover, you're making this painting for this logo for a company, or you're making this, and that's what illustration is. Otherwise, it's fine art too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Basically, because a lot of the stuff I'm seeing is like, oh, this looks like, you know, we used to say now comic book art, right? Oh, this looks like kind of comic book art. Not like Liechtenstein, but more like, you know, just, you know, oh, this is the kind of stuff you'd see in comics. Well, that's really popular now, right? With logos and build branding and all that kind of stuff. All these little small internet companies and things, they're all using that kind of iconography of comics and indie comics and little squiggly lines and pencil lines and micro pins, you know, for stuff like that. And it's all from illustration, but it's, so I'm assuming I'm going to see a lot of like what I would consider illustration type stuff.
Yeah, totally. I think that,
and there's that blurring of line. It's not like, you know, because it's all commercial. It's like commercialized in some way, or I don't know. I associate it with that.
Yeah, so I think that illustration has always had this really interesting relationship with fine art, because Norman Rockwell's paintings were illustrations.
They were illustrated for the magazines.
Yeah, but they are these beautifully magical time capsule of what like this like idealized version of
Americana.
Yeah, exactly. Of Americana. And like I don't think that like them being illustrations reduces their effectiveness by any
But people wouldn't call that fine art.
Yeah,
right? Or
but
no?
like,
definitely not the good people.
I'll be I'll be honest. I think the people who would not call it fine art don't understand. No, have this. So I forget the name of the issue here of like the it's like a phenomenon where you know so little about what you're talking about that you think what little you do know makes you an expert. Right? It's this idea about like you know so little you don't know how incompetent you are about this, right? And I definitely feel that a lot of people know so little about a lot of things, and especially in the art world, that they think they're competent, but they are, but they are utterly incompetent. And I think this is the same idea, because like in my mind, the only real functional difference in definition between fine art and illustration is like will a rich person buy it? That distinction as an artist makes no sense. Because I have seen so many illustrations that are more beautiful. I mean, that are like not, and say we're gonna get beauty out of here. That are more interesting than I've seen like in a museum. And it's like For me,
but it's so gauche because it was made for a Pepsi or a Nike ad, or it's so gauche.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's so gauche because but
money's involved. Like in the book text, money. Do we have to talk about money?
Yeah, it's like
well, yeah, dude, I gotta eat.
it's like if you want to stop talking about money, how about you start? How about we all become like how about we just go back to communism so that my job can be making art,
right.
And you want to stop talking about money, like let's break the capitalist system, and then maybe we can stop talking about money.
Okay, so I read this book about the abstract expressionists, specifically Kooning and those guys.
Yeah,
I did not know in like the 20s, 30s, 40s. These guys all had government gigs. The government paid them for the project.
The WPA, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they were paid by the government to paint.
Yeah.
To make art. And then some of them became instructors and things like that. But they were given like a job I think that is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't we have something like that? Like, you know what I mean?
Dude, it's because especially starting in the 70s, business started to make a really big effort to change to change America's culture to be very beneficial. To be very beneficial towards corporate interests, right? And so Noam Chomsky.
Noam Chomsky.
If you want to, I remember I watched a Noam Chomsky interview that's 10 minutes long, where he kind of places it out for you. And of course, I don't want to just say that he's the way he says it is exactly the truth, because one person's take on anything isn't the exact truth,
right?
But it's the New Deal was one of those magical times where we were so desperate to put people to work that we were willing to actually fund artists.
Crazy, dude.
To me,
when I read that, I was like, what? I had no idea. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's like I would love for the military, for even a fraction of a fraction,
right,
of the military's budget to be spent on a national endowment for the arts.
Yeah.
How wonderful would that be? And for it to be grants given out to individuals, not to organizations, to individuals.
People.
That all you have to do is, I don't know, maybe, if there needs to be some sort of vetting, make sure that they have a BFA or something,
right.
Or make, either a BFA or a solo show at an actual gallery.
Yeah. And
those are the only vetting things. Think of how much magic that would produce if it meant that because honestly, I'm tired, because institutions are fine. We do not need to keep funding museums because they have the funding.
Yeah.
They have learned to work within this corporate culture that they're okay. We need an actual supporting of emerging artists. I we need to help people make art careers. And so anyway, it's the WPA, I wish that those days would come back.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting. And speaking of money and gauche and things, I was even thinking because I've been to some other artist websites, maybe I should just remove all the prices. I talked to you about that.
Yeah.
When I do the solo show, and just and have we'll have a price sheet.
Yeah.
We'll just number them 1 through 20 or whatever, and then we'll just have a price sheet, and they can look up the prices, but not have, because I do this too. I know, I do this. I'll look at a painting, I'll see the name, the artist, how much it is, and what is, it was acrylic on board or whatever.
Yeah.
And I go, and I just instinctively calculate money with value of the painting, and my appreciation of the painting changes because of that number.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And I'm wondering, maybe I should just remove those and just enjoy the paintings. And if you're interested, go look, see, it's $500 or whatever.
Yeah, I think.
What is your thoughts? But at the same time, Ventura and Santa Barbara, that they put the numbers there.
Yeah.
Maybe because the schmoes like the numbers. I don't know.
It's because Ventura and Santa Barbara isn't a sophisticated art market. right? You know, there's it's because any of these like fine art, because like remember, the book is really, it's not about the art world, it's about the New York art world, and like the way that you know, I'd say it's the New York / international art world, and that's a very different world than what is happening in Ventura and than what is happening in Los Angeles, right? You know, none of the artists in that she talked about would be caught dead showing in Ventura, right? You know, and I think there is something to be said about Julie being specific about where she showed, about not being desperate enough, and I'm trying to take that to heart, because like I mean, I was rejected for a show the other day, and I was just like, you know, like kind of like
in town?
No, it was on call for entry, so it was like an online application.
Okay.
So like, I'm not doing myself any favors through online applications, to be 100% honest.
Because those cost, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, they cost like $30, but like,
but still, that's still 30.
But I'm not doing myself any favors, because it's not like I can really put an in-depth, you know, it's not like an online image sells my quilts, right? You know, it doesn't sit there and say like, this is something beautiful that should really be looked at, right? You know, and so anyway, but like I still, I don't know, it's like, I always think about the one time I was rejected from a gallery for like a show that I felt was literally made, like the description was like, this is exactly what I'm doing, and like I submitted, and it was a gallery in Star Valley, Wyoming, not even Jackson, like Star Valley. It's like the next valley over. That's like, you know, maybe has like one dinky community funded gallery, like truly one of these situations where I definitely felt like I was bigger than this gallery, right? But I was like, you know what? I want to show back west again. I wanted you know, I want to get another line item on the resume, and they rejected me, and I was like, that was like the like lowest point of like, you know, where like it was so humbling. It was so humbling, because I thought this was a shoo-in, and it wasn't. And so I forget why I was bringing this up. Oh, but the idea about like, you know, about like being particular about where you apply to, what kind of shows you're in, and I definitely think that there's the early stage where you're just like, I need enough line items on the resume just to show that I'm like doing stuff. And then once you start feeling like you have enough line items on the resume, you need to like start being particular. And right now I feel like I'm trying to be particular. I'm only applying to a couple shows, like maybe like one show every other month. And because I'm literally trying to be like, okay, I want to make sure that this is, and I don't necessarily think that any of these shows I'm finding on call for entry are really good shows,
right?
But I'm trying to be like selective about like what I apply to, so that I feel like if I did get it, I wouldn't feel like this is a waste of money for me to send this, you know, to send this just to get the line item, right? You know, and so anyway, but like, because like I think what's her face, Bianca talked about like at the nearing the end of like Julie's chapter, she ends up spending a page talking about what she thinks Julie did to get her career going.
Yes.
And I literally felt like that was...
She was part of the community. She went to everyone else's openings.
Yeah, she went to everyone else's openings, and she was particular about what she applied. You know, she did, you know, and I thought that was the best practical advice I've ever seen. And it's definitely a lot of the advice that I would give other people. And it's the advice I wish I was better at following myself. Because I do not think I am good enough about getting out and going to shows right now and talking to people, because like my work, since I work till 7, I don't have like the time to like, you know, the time and energy on a Friday, you know, to like go hit an art show right away. And so there's some things about me where I'm just like, I need to figure out a better way to get myself inserted in the community. I was even talking to my therapist about this, and he was like, you know what you need to do, especially since you like you need to take like half a day off, since like a half day you would be back into work by like 3, and you need to take a morning to like go in and like, especially if you want an art professor job, go walk the campus, like be able to like envision yourself there and like walk into the art building, get to meet the people, and like just introduce yourself, you know. And if you run into a faculty member, great. If you don't, at least you now know who the people are who run the front desk. And like, don't go in there being like, I'm looking for a job. Just go in there and be like, hey, I'm a local artist in the community. I just barely got here. I'm trying to get a vibe for everything. And then, you know, I just wanted to come in and meet people, you know. And so and then just like, yeah. And so like I was like, and so like there's like things that I can do. Like there's other ways that I can like get involved with the community without having to show up to, without trying to feel bad, without feeling bad about not showing up to openings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, last question thought. Going back to the pricing.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, because we didn't talk about that at all.
So, put the numbers on. Don't put the numbers. I know.
I don't know if I'm the person to ask on this one, because like.
Well, I'm gonna ask my buddies who are local.
Yeah, because it's been a while since I've sold the work, and I haven't, of course, never shown or sold here in Ventura. So like I don't know. I think.
I kind of want to do it just for my. I kind of want to
just like take the prices off and do the prices.
Just because, hey, if someone really wants it, they'll ask me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it does. I mean, I'm curious today what it'll be like. I think they don't have the prices. I think you have to ask, but I'm just guessing. And when I went to brewery, the art walk there, no one had prices. So you had to ask. So I'm curious to see. It maybe doesn't even make a difference, but I think in a way it does make a difference for me at least. Because I do look at it.
I think like,
I can afford that. Or not,
I think a price list would be. I think having a price list, you know, that's still accessible, but like not immediately. For me, I would think that would be a better way to experience the work.
Yeah.
Where because I guess like the message it communicates to me would be, you know, of course this is not about whether or not you're selling, you know, I don't know if this is good advice for selling, but like it communicates to me that you're confident enough in the work that you put up that you do not have to put a price to it to attach value to it.
Yeah.
Because sadly sometimes attaching value to it also ruins like the value because someone might be like, I'm not willing to pay that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pay $10,000.
Yeah, or like, or if you undervalue it and someone's like, oh, they think this is only worth this much. Maybe it's not as good as I thought it was.
Well, that happens too.
Yeah, and so I think an accessible price list can at least allow you to like the experience, the audience experience of the art will be you know, more pure is the wrong word, but more like art focused.
Yeah, well, and not commercial. And so that was originally my goal was, okay, I'm going to make 20 paintings in this gallery. It's going to be 20 paintings and my goal is to sell out. My goal is to sell these bitches.
Yeah.
But now, as I'm reading the book, as I'm just painting more, and I'm thinking, you know what? Don't get me wrong. I want that to happen.
Yeah.
But I think my goal now is just to have a good, really have a good show where people enjoy the work. People are enjoying the experience of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so the experience of the art, the inspiration or whatever that they're feeling from it, that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And hey, if I sell a bunch, freaking great. But even if I sold everything, it's really not going to move the needle on my life. They're not going for 10 grand each. So it's not going to change my life. So I'm not going to put that as the most important thing. Yeah. What I really want is the right people there and them to have a good time.
Yeah. For me,
you know what I'm saying?
I think that's kind of like my goal right now is that like I feel like I have a body of work that is cohesive to some extent, but isn't cohesive enough. And so what I've been working on is like that I'm going to be doing with this bison that I'm carving is like I'm really intent on creating a body, you know, a series of show that feels 100% like it all fits together, like that it's all speaking to one another, that it's all part of the same idea, right?
Yeah.
It's like different facets of the same idea, obviously, but I want to make something that I can sit there and look at and be like, I'm damn proud of this. I could not have, you know, there's no way I could have made it better at this particular time, right? And then like that's my goal right now, to make for like my art career, is to make that, and then it'll be like, now once I made the art, I need to sell it. I need to get it out there. I need to I need to put it in a gallery. And so but I can't be trying to get the show. I know there's some people who are like get the show, make the work for the show. It's like I want something that like I can be proud of, and that I can like, you know, that I have like this very strong thing that if like once someone sees it and says like, I want you to be in a show tomorrow, I can put it in the show tomorrow, and I can like, so I have this like, so like I think that that's a great idea about like, make a show that you're proud of, and then if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah. You know, and but at the very least, you know that you made work that's like of quality.
That's good. Yeah. Well, there was a guy, Solomon Goss, which is a gallery in Santa Barbara. Probably
I've seen that one. Yeah.
I talked to Jeremy, who's like their director or curator, director, or somebody, like one of those names. He goes, this is what you do. We were just talking about art. He's like, first off, you got to go to LA. He's like, there's nothing here. He said, you get known in LA, you get shown in New York. And I thought that was interesting, just that idea of like, you go to LA, you get known as a person, but in New York, then you go to New York, and that's where you get shown. Where that's, I guess that's where the you get opened up the opportunities. I thought that was interesting because you made a comment just now. You said, get the show and then do the work for the show.
Yeah. There are some people
that's kind of like philosophy.
Yeah.
Where but then don't you, but at least you have to have a gallery visit with a
I mean
who says, okay, you got the chops to put them together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like there is, so like for me, I feel like my base right now feels jerry-rigged. Like I feel like my foundation of the work that I have is good, but it's not strong enough. It's not enough. It's not foundational enough to be like, see, look, this is what I do. And I feel like if I like the current thing that I'm working on right now, I feel like can really get me, like can really be like, this is what I can do. You know, like this is what happens when I have the time and the ability to make a show. You know, that I have six months to pump this out. I will do it in 6 months. I will get you, you know, I will get you this.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, that's kind of like, you know, because I know eventually you kind of get to the point where once a career is moving, you get to a point where you get the show and then you have to make the work for the show. And that's just how it goes, because you literally, like, there's no work left. Right. But like, yeah. And so like, I think the next big thing I want to do is actually the Spring Break art show. It's
Where's that?
What was that?
Where's that?
There's two of them. There's one in New York and there's one in LA. The one in LA is I think it's happening relatively soon. But it's essentially like an art fair, but it's like really scrappy. And so it's but like the Spring Break art show, if you paid attention, that's where Julie got noticed by a gallery.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and the Spring Break art show is also where my buddy Thomas from grad school got noticed by a gallery.
That's the guy you were talking to me about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's because the Spring Break art show is like scrappy, and because it's a lot more artist led, and what you do is you apply to do the show, and you like, I think what you do is you do like a I remember looking at it this year and being like, oh, this is interesting, but I don't think I have like a cohesive enough thing to be like, to say like, this is my proposal, right? And so I, you know, I like, kind of my goal like right now is being like, if I can get everything done in time to submit a proposal for Spring Break, I would do that without a second get, you know. And then maybe I don't get it because I don't think Spring Break happens super, you know. I don't, you know, sometimes you get it your first try, other times you don't. But like, you know, it's but like, yeah, I definitely would love. It's like my only concern about like trying to do the LA art career, like going into LA, is I'm just like, how many times can I drive into LA before I want to shoot myself? You know,
many.